All right, so we just started a really interesting conversation. Because I asked Aaron, what would you say to a parent or parents of like a 7 or 8 year old kid who is very energetic, who, has destructive tendencies, who often likes to play the so what game. You try to explain to him, don't get the ball dirty because then you're gonna be dirty, then you're gonna have, dirty laundry, and he keeps going, so what, so what, so what. And you can tell that the parents are getting, they're tired physically and tired of his shit, right? So I asked Aaron, what would you say to parents like that? Because not only does the kid have like destructive tendencies, and he's a nice kid, he has a lot of energy, but then because he doesn't have a long attention span, he doesn't want to write, he doesn't want to read a lot. So will this transfer like to his older life or adult life? What would you say in such a situation?
Okay, so first let's qualify why Aaron is allowed to say something about this. Okay, because that's what I think the people who are here because of the book may not know the other side of my life, which has been being a parent coach for 20 years. And I ran a drug and alcohol and self-harm mental health treatment center for teenagers. I work with 7 to 9 year olds. I've trained parents and therapists and clinicians in the archetypes and teach archetypal parenting and archetypal therapeutic intervention. So this is the other work that I do. And you'll see on our YouTube page here, there are some videos specific to parenting. So now we're playing what I call the chase me game, right? I failed my test. How come? The teacher hates all students. Did everybody fail? Most of us did. Well, how many people did? Enough. Well, you didn't study. Doesn't matter. The teacher would have failed me anyway. Well, why don't you study harder? I hate school. Well, what do you mean you hate school? No, I have no friends. Well, you were hanging out with Steven yesterday. Nobody likes me, but Steven likes you. I just feel depressed. And you're like, wait a minute. I thought we were talking about the fact that you failed a test. And that's the chase me game, right? No matter what you say to this 7 year old who keeps saying, so what? Don't bounce the ball in the water. Why? Well, because if the ball get dirty. So what? Well, then your hands will get dirty. So what? We don't have a way to clean your hands. So what? Wizard parents tend to have a need or a drive, wizard aunts and uncles. Martina.
not
Sorry, I
not
was
me,
coughing.
absolutely not me.
Wizards in general, because in their lives such a high value is put on logic and intellect and truth and what is right, the different kind of what is right than a warrior, right? This is not a faith-based system that a wizard
Mhm.
has. This is based in logic. If your hands are dirty and it's cold outside, you will get cold sooner. Therefore, we will need to go inside and you will have less time to play. So don't get dirty. Very logical to anybody with an intellect higher than a 7 year old. So it makes sense there was a wizard to say, hey, this is a teaching moment. That's for you. That's not for the kid. You have decided what a successful playtime will look like with your child. You have decided what a successful school time
Mm.
will look like with your child. And you have evidence to back up this decision. It's not just a random decision. And if you don't have evidence ready, your brain will create it for you, wizard. So don't worry. You have the evidence that you are right. But let me quote the 7 year old. So what? So you're right. I remember one time getting out of a car. My daughter and I were at Target. And I said, Maya, put on your jacket. Why? Because it's Boulder, Colorado. It's 17 degrees outside. I'm not cold. Put on your jacket. I don't want to. Maya, put your jacket on. Why? And she kept going with the so what, why game until I finally, in my warrior parenting style, just hollered at her, put on your jacket. Stop asking questions. She got this defeated look. She went back to the car. She grabbed her jacket. And while she was going back to the car, I said, You just told your daughter to stop questioning.
Mm.
That's never something I want her to do. That's not something I want her to learn from the primary male figure in her life, that you can't question me. I want Maya to always ask questions. I want her to confront authority with a logical question. And the truth is, Mr. Logic Warrior, this is the way it's going to be in my household. It's a 20-yard walk to the front door of Target. What do you think? She's going to freeze to death? And no, wait a second. Let's even go deeper. If she is cold and you do nothing but support her strategy, will she question her strategy when she goes, I'm cold? And you go, I'll bet. And that's it. That's all you say. You don't be like, told you so. Yeah, parent wins. That's ridiculous. That's your ego. That's not the child's experience. You see, you're either going to get your child to focus on their strategy or your emotional response. Your frustration with the child not listening to your logic was why they were saying, so what? Because you had said nothing that actually matters to the child. Everything you said mattered to you. It doesn't matter to the child until it affects the child. But you're talking about things that possibly might happen in the future, which is what the wizard is always doing. Oh, they don't have a jacket on. Let me gaze into my crystal ball to tell you what the future will look like. Dumb child, where I am a brilliant wizard, you will be cold. So says I. And the child goes, so what? And you're like, how dare you poke a hole in my logic? Go put a jacket on. Don't bounce the ball in a puddle. A child will not learn, a warrior, wizard, jester, bard child will not learn that their strategy is flawed until the consequence matters. What parents do as a way of protecting our children as warriors or wizards, even bards, jesters are better at this part. They're just like, see what happens. You don't wear a jacket and bounce the ball in the cold puddle and you get too cold to do anything later. Okay. Now, that can be seen as a lack of parenting, but the
Yes, I was
child who
just gonna
bounced,
say, then
yeah,
people are gonna start shouting, neglect, abuse.
well, that's a fear-based statement, right? And it's the same fear parenting statement that comes up when the child's throwing a fit in the sugary cereal aisle of the grocery store, and everybody in the grocery store is, oh my God, they're hearing this child. So what? Like, so what? When did this 7-year-old, as Aunt Martina is profoundly expressing the future dynamic and possible and plausible infinite realities that are coming down the galactic pipeline to this child's experience, as you are busy speaking those truths, so what? So the kid gets dirty and the mom says, I got to do more laundry. None of that affects the child.
Mm.
You want to affect the child, tell the child to start doing their own laundry and teach them how. I don't want to. I don't either. The chores suck and I'm tired of doing yours. So you're going to do them. And here's how you work the laundry machine. And I put these amazing instructions. Well, I can't read. Bummer. Because until the child learns the consequence of not being able to read on their own, there is nothing a parent can say. There is no amount of fear that is going to change a trajectory.
Mm.
It'll change it for the parent. The anger will change it for the parent, but not the child. All of the archetypes, except sometimes the jester, will learn to change the strategy through consequence. The problem with archetypal parenting is, for the warrior, the consequence is a loud voice and the setting down of the law. This is what it's going to be in my house. Shut your mouth. It's my way or the highway. And what we're communicating is, I don't trust you to keep this environment safe. For the wizard, the consequence will be the lecture and the lesson and the wonderful oratory on how your wisdom and brilliance is perfect and the child's is flawed. There's only so much a child, especially a wizard child, can hear that. before they just shut down and they stop listening.
Mm.
And you continue on how all of your reasoning. And by the way, here's another potential reality that may emerge from you bouncing a ball in a puddle. And therefore, look how brilliant I am as a 54-year-old parent uncle who is teaching you the wisdom and the ways of the world. And the child is like, none of this matters to me. But when the child bounces the ball in a puddle and gets dirt in their eye and goes, ah, and scratches their cornea by rubbing their eye, guess what they're not going to do next time? Will they die from getting scratched? No. Will they die from failing math class? No. And until you allow the child to experience not life and limb consequences. And here's what the bard parent does, or the wizard parent. My child can't read in second grade. So therefore, by the time they graduate high school, they will not be as good of a reader. And so therefore they won't have gotten into a good a university and they won't get as good of a job. They won't make as good as money. And the government will take most of the money through taxes. They won't be able to eat. Now they'll die. See, I know that second grade English is important. Like that's not real. That's just not real. What's real is at some point, this child who will not take a bath every night will be told by other kids at school, you smell.
Mm.
Here's the honest to God truth. I would still have Chewbacca sheets on my bed if my wife would sleep in them, but she won't. So therefore,
Aw.
the consequence, the has outweighed the payoff,
Mhm.
right? And so when their warriors create that threat of consequence that really to a young child feels real.
Mhm.
Bards create the emotional. How could you do this to me? I am a good parent and now I have to do even more laundry. And the child's like, oh God, here we go again. I've got to deal with my father's emotion. Or the wizard. And another thing, point 6B, part 2. What I want you to understand about ball puddle bouncing is this. And the child's like, ah, those aren't consequences. What is a consequence? What changes a child's behavior is a failed strategy. This
Mhm.
is why, to answer another issue that comes up, this is why children love video games, because you can fail 1,000 times and beat the level. Parents don't think you should let the kid fail. Ah, I've had some business failures in my life. I can think of two right off the top of my head that cost me tens of thousands of dollars.
Mm.
I can think of a failed partnership that I created that cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. Tell me that it's not okay to fail. Because now I'm more financially
I
and
was just gonna
most
say, tell me what you gained.
right. Because you
Exactly.
win or learn. You don't win or lose.
Yeah.
But we're teaching our kids you win or lose. We don't.
So basically, you're saying as a parent, be a bit more of a jester, let the kid figure it out. Of course, not if it's life and death situation, life or limb. Um, and as you were explaining that, I felt not only, wow, this is brilliant. You know, my wizard brain went, oh my God, this is brilliant. But I felt the pressure lifting, the pressure of trying to be the perfect aunt, the aunt that has all the answers, that knows how to deal with, kids. It feels really good to just
The
be able to
best
go, oh right, you can actually trust the kid to experience the consequences and learn.
my nieces and nephews, all of them, I get to be the bee's knees uncle. I'm the crazy uncle because they all believe that I taught them how to throw axes. I never taught any of them to throw an axe. I just brought axes and a target and said, here are the rules. You abuse it, you lose it. Go have fun. And I gave them one rule. If you abuse it, you lose it. Now,
Mhm.
then I would ask them later, once they start throwing, what do you think abusing this would look like? When I say if you abuse it, you lose it. Oh, well, if I hit somebody with it, yeah. And what else? And they give me all the rules. What we're dealing with when we're dealing with archetypes or archetypal parenting and archetypal children is the four prime ways we solve problems. As much as the four prime ways that we buy things or deal with relationships, or there are four ways that we solve problems: mentally, emotionally, physically, and
Mm,
spiritually. And we're just segmenting how people solve problems. So when you see a child who should be solving the problem mentally, because that's how you solve them, you're creating the problem. What if, to your point, we release the tension and we say, um, how are you going to solve this? So
mm,
he splashes in the puddle. How are you going to solve this? You got my pants wet when you splashed it in the puddle. This is a problem for me. And I didn't make this problem. And I'm about to make this problem your problem because I'm upset and I want to go home now. How are you going to solve this problem so I don't want to go home? What's your new strategy? And I'm sorry. Apologies are important to me, but I'm still wet and cold. So how are you going to solve this problem since I didn't make myself wet and cold and I'm frustrated that someone else made a problem for me? And now this 7-year-old's brain is going, "Well, figure this out because I don't want to leave." And now Aunt Martina wants to leave. Hey, Mom, I failed my math test. Well, here's what you should have done: A, B, C, D, 1, 2, and 3, part A. The kid already knows.
mm,
So how is the kid going to solve the problem? And this, look, let's be clear, parents. I'm a parent. My kids are 27 and 28. They have adult sized problems now. One of my kids has a kid. They're both married. They have adult sized problems. The hardest thing to do their entire lives is to let them solve their own problems. But the warrior says, my way or the highway, which communicates you can't solve your own problems. The bard says, your problems affect me so deeply that now I can't, and guilt has never solved a problem ever. And don't believe me? Ask any Catholic or Jewish person how many problems guilt actually solves. I mean, we all have it. But in fact, what we know in addiction research is it makes
mhm.
problems worse. Ask any wizard. The moment you start solving your child's problems, how do they learn to solve their own? By listening to you solve theirs?
Nope.
That's never worked in the history of ever.
Never.
And jesters don't really solve problems a lot. They just kind of walk away from them, and that doesn't help. So, what are we left with? We're left with communicating to the child that their archetype is designed to solve problems, all of them,
Mm,
jesters included. And you got to trust them to practice. Now, as Martina said, and this is the most important thing, if the problem is life and limb, true life and limb, not manufactured life and limb,
mhm.
true life and limb, then they can solve it. But if it is life and limb, you bet, parents, you have to swoop in and solve it. But your kid, I remember this so well. I was leaving a hockey game. My dad was driving. He said, and I was sitting in the front seat with him. And he said, how did you do? And we lost badly. And I was the goalie. How do you think you did? How'd you do? I said, yeah, the other team cheated and the ref didn't see because the ref and the coach of the other team, blah, blah, blah. What do I know? I was 13 years old.
Mhm.
He slammed on the brakes in the car and I felt myself getting tugged against the seatbelt. And he looked at me and he goes, you lost because they're better than you. And if you want to be better than them, practice more than they do. And he started driving again. And I was butthurt all the way home. And when I got home, I practiced because it's a failed strategy. And he didn't spend the rest of the car ride telling me all the ways I could practice or how many hours I should do or analyzing it. And I went total bard. I was butthurt. And he was in that moment. And my dad's very, very wizard. He spoke a simple truth. If you get wet, I'm taking you home because I'm not willing for you to be outside in the cold. Now
Mhm.
go do what you're going to do. This is the hard part, parents. They go get wet, better take them home because you said you would. And if you're not, they've just blown a hole in your strategy.
Yeah.
Archetypal parenting. And this is a big breakdown. And we have a lot of videos about archetypal parenting, including the basics. But you really got to understand who you are first. And I know when people read the book, they tend to focus, and we wrote about this in the book, Martina. People tend to read the book and point fingers. Oh my God, that's why
Mhm.
they and my kid and my sister and her children and blah, 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 blah. But the first part is like, oh, when I'm a warrior parent and my child goes, no, and they try to express their power as a warrior, God, what am I going to do with that moment? I did not handle that first one well at all. Here's what
Mm.
I did to round that story out. Maya came back from the car and she was bummed and she was putting on her jacket. And in the Target parking lot, I got down on my knees and I said, always question. What I said was wrong. I said, stop asking questions. Don't ever stop asking questions. Question me, question cops, question politicians, question your teachers, question your friends. Ask questions. I'm
Mm.
sorry I said what I said. I was frustrated and I was worried, parent. You'll be fine if you don't want to wear your jacket. She goes, it's okay. She heard. Because now that my daughter's 28 years old, if I say something she doesn't like, what do you think she does? She questions it, right? And the warrior and the bard are willing to go back even to their children and say, I was totally wrong. I'm so sorry. Don't do what I said. Ask questions.
Mm.
Wizard parents, you got a hard time admitting you were wrong because wrong and bad mean the same thing. So warrior up and go sit with your 7-year-old nephew and say, God, the other day when you wanted to splash in the puddle and you kept saying, I was so frustrated, primarily because, and then go bard. Warrior up to be courageous enough to tell your children you're screwing up and bard up enough to then say, man, when you started questioning everything that I was thinking, I got totally frustrated and that just made me angry. And I don't want to be angry, Aunt Martina. You got me, kid. You were asking me questions that I was struggling to answer. And you know what? Next time we go out, we're going to go find some puddles. We're going to wear the right clothes and we're going to find some puddles. We're going to splash balls in them and jump in them so we can see what happens. Because that's the real experiment of being an aunt is we're going to go do this, but we're going to be smart about it. And we're going to bring a change of clothes so we don't have to go home after.
Yeah, just for the record, I wasn't as frustrated because he's a very smart kid. So we had a discussion about it. And he splashed around in puddles anyway, so
Of course
we
he
had a good
did.
time.
He's 7.
Of
He's
course.
7. Of course he did. So what?
Yeah.
I love that. So what? Every parent
Yeah.
should look at their consequence that they're about to levy against their child and hear the words, so what? Because A, if the consequence don't hurt, the consequence don't matter. And B,
Mm.
emotional consequences become irrelevant the moment your child hits 12 years old. And if that's what you're practicing your child to respond to, you're sunk. How do I know? Because I've worked with thousands of teenagers who think that emotional consequences are irrelevant.
Mhm.
Irrelevant. And emotional parenting, I'm not saying don't have emotions. As a parent, you're going to have emotions, frustration, fear, anger. The warrior gets angry, the bard gets afraid, and the wizard gets frustrated. How do I know? Because I've been teaching parents their archetypes for a long time. But emotional parenting, it becomes ineffective, irrelevant. And that the moment you sense that it's becoming irrelevant as a parent, you have to switch from protecting your child, because the truth is what you did telling him not to bounce in the puddle was trying to protect him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the warrior and the bard parent would be doing the same thing. But there's a moment where we have to transition from protecting our kids into preparing our kids to live in this world and to live in this world successfully. To be a success in the world, you have to be able to analyze your strategy. And to
Mm.
do that, people have to teach you how. And that means they got to let you fail and then ask the right questions, not be like, see, I told you, now we got to go home and I got to do more laundry. And so now we can't play. That's emotional, punitive And it doesn't
Exactly.
matter. They'll go home and they'll jump on YouTube, and then you'll be frustrated that they're watching videos. And by the way, I say this to every parent who's frustrated with your kid not reading and is being on the YouTube, turn on the closed captions, because then they're reading.
That's
In fact,
smart.
kids who watch media with closed caption on read better than
Mm.
children who read books. That has been proven in Finland, and it is blowing people away. The words are moving fast, and so the child automatically is picking them up faster. And tell me, parents, if you're watching a movie with subtitles, are you really watching the movie, or are you reading the subtitles?
I like to say both, but yeah,
Well,
that's
but that's
totally
your
smart.
job, Martina. Is it you for years you've been writing subtitles, so of course. But I like to say both as well, and your child will do both as well.
Yeah,
So turn on the subtitles.
that's
Don't bitch
true.
about the movies. Turn on the subtitles.
It's actually enrichment
Yes,
if you look at it that way, right?
yes,
Because you get another layer of whatever it's called.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we say this to teens. They're not reading. Are you kidding? Have you seen how much they text? They're reading all
Hmm.
day long. Well, it's all abbreviations and emojis. Shorthand? Uh like, yeah, they are very, and they can't write cursive. Let me quote a 7-year-old genius. So what? So what? We can't code. What was it? It's like you, well, they can't drive a stick shift. You can't log onto your computer without getting hacked and giving all your money away to the Prince of Zambia or something. Like, shut up, boomer.
Exactly. Oh, this was actually a lot more than I was in fact expecting. So, brilliant. Um, I don't know if there's anything else to add other than, you know, watch the
Buy the
videos
book.
and read the book, buy the book, read the book,
Buy the
leave
book.
a review, and we'll see you next time.